Welcome back. You're watching Mirror Now. I'm Ritankshu Bhattacharya. Now, amid wide criticism by the opposition for not conducting a press conference ever since he has become Prime Minister, Narendra Modi has finally broken his silence on the issue. The Prime Minister, who's looking at a third term, has defended his decision to refrain from holding press conferences in an interview with a news channel. He has cited that the significant shift in the nature of the media behind this decision is because the media, according to him, is no longer neutral. Emphasizing that he has never declined an interview request, the Prime Minister has pointed out that journalists these days are identified with their own preferences, unlike other times. While claiming how the media used to be faceless back in the day, the Prime Minister has alleged that the situation is no longer the same in the country anymore. Let's put that claim to our guests who are joining us at this point. We have Vineeta Hariharan, who's joining us from the BJP. Dr. Nikul Patel, political analyst, is joining us as well. And also joining me is senior journalist Pankaj Vora here. Pankaj, coming to you first. As a senior journalist, do you really identify, do you really agree with the Prime Minister's logic that an interview is inherently more unbiased and more neutral than a press conference?
Well, I would not like to say anything, but I think a press conference is a very essential part of public life, where even inconvenient
Yes.
questions when they are put, have to be addressed. Life is not only about questions which are convenient. There are issues which need to be given proper solutions, proper answers. Parliament many times does not function. Questions do not get asked there. So, somebody has to ask those questions. And if there's a press conference, even if it is managed by those who are holding it, there are always one or two questions which, put to rest speculation or, all kinds of doubts. So I think it is extremely important all over the world. Media is like this. There are some people who favor a
Yes.
particular dispensation. There are some who may not. So questions are, put across accordingly. So even if there are questions which are against the dispensation, they need to be addressed. And if the answers are given properly, or if they are parried, or if they are, side stepped, a lot of things get greater clarity. This is how I look at it.
Okay, let's get in a response from the BJP on that. Pankaj, stay on with us. Vineeta Hariharan is spokesperson of the BJP. Vineeta ji, if you can hear me, I think we are having some connections with Vineeta ji, but let's go across to Nikul Patel, who's joining us at this point. Nikul, if I could be a devil's advocate and try and understand where the Prime Minister is coming from, if the nature of engagement, one would believe, has changed at this point here. The Prime Minister has not given a press conference in the past 15 odd years, yes, but he's also not needed to, because from his point of view, the Janta understands his messaging. He has many forms of communicating and expressing his message to the people, whether it be Man Ki Baat, whether it be social media platforms here. He's one of the most popular and widely followed leaders in the world. And whenever there is a case for him to be questioned and cross-questioned by the media, he has done it in the form of interviews, which there have been a plethora in this poll season. Is there any need for a press conference?
Firstly, if you see, yes, you rightly say that the Honorable Prime Minister had not conducted a press conference in since so many years. The reason behind it, he himself might be knowing it. But if you see, when it comes to a press conference, definitely it's a kind of exam to a statesman. And a statesman of an highest order of the country, if he had done good work, then he must be able to answer anything. It's like an exam because you don't know what questions can be posed by media, which is the fourth pillar of
Indeed.
our democracy, as rightly said by my co-panelist, that some questions may not be asked in the parliament, but by media, the people of the country may know what the prime minister is thinking of. No doubt, prime minister is putting his voice by so many means like Man Ki Baat and his personal interviews, but that I think that he's putting his one-way traffic, and in a democratic structure, we must have two-way communication, which is always going to help out so many things. So definitely, if you don't want to give a
I think
press
there's a very
conference, that is
simple,
why you are putting an
yeah,
excuse.
go
That's
on.
not correct. That's not correct.
There's a very simpler way to put it, Dr. Patel, what you've just said, and I think Vineeta Hariharan is with us at this point. Vineeta, thank you for joining us on this debate. If I have to sit for an exam paper and I already know what questions will come in beforehand, it makes it very easier for me to answer such an exam, isn't it?
I don't think this is the right analogy, and definitely a press conference is no exam for the prime minister when he's passed the biggest examination, which is running the country successfully for the last 10 years. What other proof does the press and what other proof does the nation need to know about the prime minister's performance? It is very evident in all his works and whatever he does, in whatever he speaks otherwise, and he's addressing thousands and thousands of people in rallies and other places, and he's also talking to the poorest of the poor, going to their homes and addressing their issues. What other outreach do we need from the prime minister of the country? So I think this is no analogy at all, and this is not an examination at all for prime minister as tall as Modi ji, who is acclaimed as the globe's one of the globe's topmost leaders of the globe itself. So I don't think a press conference is any examination at all for the prime minister.
But then in that case, why has he not answered? And I'll give an example to answer what you said earlier, that there are various forms in which he's already been reaching out to the public. These are all one-way communications, Vineeta ji. Whether he comes up with a Man Ki Baat address, whether he comes up with a social media post, even to an extent when he does an interview, he has already, either he has decided the topics of discussion or the topics on which he is going to speak about, or he is aware about it. There is never any feedback from the opposite side. He has never asked a question which he does not want to answer.
No, absolutely not. You can see all his interviews, even the recent ones that he's given, he's also answered very uncomfortable questions. He's answered criticisms against him. He's taken criticisms against him also very well in the most evolved and spiritual manner that any tall leader of any part of the world can do. This is how he's handled criticism, which is coming in daily from the opposition. He's answering questions in parliament. He's there in parliament, and and the kind of opposition, the kind of obstacles that the opposition has brought in time and again in parliament, and the way he's countered it, and the way he's able to navigate a country as complex as India with diverse opinions and the diverse kind of set of issues. The way he's kind of unified it and brought the country to a shape which we could never dream of before. I think that's the biggest examination that the prime minister has passed, and the context in which he spoke about press conferences should be seen in that light. He's talked about how, as a Karyakarta, he's been doing all that it requires of a prime minister. He's gone to people's homes. He's answered questions, to what questions that the poor have. He's answered those questions directly to them. And what else do we need as answers from the prime minister? So I think that's the context in which we have to see his expressions that he's brought out recently.
Pankaj, okay. Pankaj Vora, do you agree with Vineeta Hariharan's views?
I don't want to get into any, contest with the BJP spokesperson. She has her views. She has to defend her prime minister, and she's fully justified in saying whatever she wishes to say. But as a journalist, having covered, national affairs for a very, very long time, very considerable period, what I have noticed over a period of time, over several decades, is that prime ministers do address press conferences. And in this country also, there was a time when whenever the prime minister used to go on a foreign visit, journalists would, accompany that particular prime minister in the aircraft in which he was traveling. And after the conclusion of the visit, the journalists would, gather in the aircraft itself, and the prime minister would give a lowdown on whatever had happened, or he would be asked questions which are even outside that particular trip, concerning national affairs, concerning international affairs, and the prime ministers would readily answer. So Mr. Modi, for whatever reasons, I mean, if that's how he likes it, it's his prerogative. He's the prime minister. If he does not wish to address certain doubts which are in people's mind and wants to address them through one-way communication, it is his prerogative. But as a generality, it is always good. A lot of things get clarified when the prime minister, answers a tricky situation, in a tricky situation, answers complex questions. And that's it. I mean, it's for, his benefit also. And it is for benefit of the people whom he represents as the leader of the country. So it is, not, there's no vested interest involved in it. Media may have views, but when a question is asked and the answer is given, it is reported as it is. There is no colored, presentation of that particular question. But controlled interviews or controlled
But
media interactions, unnecessarily give rise to doubts in people's mind that there is something which they do not want to address or they don't want to talk about. So this is what I think,
But
that
then, as the
to
BJP
set
is
all these
arguing,
things.
Pankaj Vora, as the BJP is arguing, the results are there on the table. Clearly, it's a model that has worked very well in terms of success. And let me bring in Nikul Patel on that. Uh, Pankaj Vora mentioned something which used to be a trend in under earlier prime ministers. For instance, if they would go for an abroad foreign trip, there used to be a massive contingent of media persons who used to accompany them. And there were all kinds of stories which I'm sure all of us know about in terms of how, in terms of the benefits, it became almost, let me just put it in simple words, it almost became a junket for the media contingent here, all at the state's expense. That was a wasteful expenditure that has been cut down by the current prime minister and his team. And in many ways, one would argue the media has been made redundant. Is that really something which has impacted the BJP, because the BJP's success is there for the world to see?
See, the second, your question regarding what it may be the thought of a government that where they want to curtail the funds that need to be spent. But when it comes to media and the justification given by Honorable Prime Minister that the media may be having their own ideological views and that is why they may be posing some questions which are not good to the government. And that conceptual thought process is not correct from my perspective or from the country's perspective, because the statesmen of an highest order must be able to acknowledge as well as accept as well as any types of queries that may be posed by the fourth pillar of the democracy, because ultimately the people of the country knows what is happening in the government through the daily circulars and newspapers and medias and electronic and digital platforms. Unless and until the media don't get anything from the feedback from the government, how they can furnish to the people of the country. But as my BJP panelists rightly say that the honorable prime minister is giving exams due to how the election is being holding up. But after elections, whatever queries that are being posed for different policies and different going on, the prime minister must hold press conference. That is nothing wrong in holding it, and he must be able to answer everything, whatever question is posed to him, because he is the responsible person, and the government is only asked what is happening in the country and not the opposition.
Let's have a practical demo of that, Vineeta Hariharan, of a question which the Prime Minister has not answered so far, and there's no other way to get the Prime Minister's response on it. Yesterday, the Prime Minister carried a roadshow through Ghatkopar, and then he came on X or Twitter, whatever you'd call it, and came up with a long thread summing up all the love he has received from Mumbai and Maharashtra and what he plans to do for Mumbai and how he promises to take the infrastructure of Mumbai to the next step. This is a long Twitter thread which the Prime Minister posted yesterday. 3 days before, at the same spot, there was an infrastructure failure on account of the BMC, which took the lives of 16 people. The Prime Minister has not spoken on it, either in public or on social media, where he is a great social media following. And if I, as a citizen, want to get to know as to what does my Prime Minister think about an incident which was something entirely down to civic apathy and took 16 lives, and he went through that spot and he has spoken on the infrastructure of Mumbai, but he has still not spoken on it. How do I get a response from him?
So there are several, issues that the Prime Minister addresses. There are several issues that his representatives address, and so therefore, it's not that he's not, with the people who suffered in the accident that happened in the, in the route where he through the route where he took his road show. So, but just because he doesn't speak about it doesn't mean that his actions will not be there towards the betterment of that particular or an intervention towards that accident that happened. So it just because he cannot speak on every other thing that happens, but definitely his sentiments and his actions will speak for itself. You can see what he would be doing for those people through his representatives. So similarly, with the media, there are several spokespersons in the BJP who speak on issues that matter, who address the media, who counter the media's, whatever concerns they have addresses the concerns of the media. So it's the prerogative of the Prime Minister to come where he thinks it is appropriate and where he thinks it is efficient of his time, where his time efficiency also has to be taken into account, and where he feels the people need him, he would be there definitely. And that's where we see him today in every other part of the country. He's traveling 24 bar 7. He's on the job. And we know that from the last 10 years, 24 bar 7 has been his mantra. And that is the success that we see on the ground. What more can we ask from a prime minister? And he's running his cabinet successfully. He has several people who addresses various sectors, as is the governance, to be done. Ideal governance is when you delegate responsibilities towards your, with various ministers that you have in your cabinet. You align responsibilities with various other officers, and that's how he operates. And I think he's operating the most efficient manner. Not only I, but I think the people of India think that he is operating the most efficient manner. And so I think we cannot
Okay.
pinprick on on certain issues which he would not have addressed at that particular moment. But that does not mean that he would not take action towards that particular mishap that happened.
Well, Vineeta, you almost referred to that incident as a small incident, and you
No,
corrected
it's not.
yourself,
I did
to
not
be
say it's a
fair.
small
But
incident. I said
that's
a
the point.
mishap.
It's
But you have to see it in the larger context of the entire country's landscape and the kind of issues that we have. We have mega issues, but we do not say that any small accident is a small accident. There would be action taken towards that, and you can see for yourself what would be done towards that particular accident that happened.
fair enough. I'll let the last word go to Pankaj Vora as a senior journalist. Mr. Vora, would you agree with the Prime Minister's statement that the media is no longer neutral? There are vested interests across all, catering to all political spectrums, which is why you cannot trust on the integrity of a media contingent.
No, I agree with the Prime Minister that the media is not neutral because most of the channels just show one-sided information and do not care to reflect on the other side. So it is unidimensional versions which appear on most channels, which seem to be working not for their viewers, but sometimes they give an impression that they are working for the ruling dispensation. This is something which is not a good sign in a democracy. And what is neutrality? Neutrality is that you get to ask questions regardless of whoever you are addressing those questions to. India is a very diverse country. There are areas where the BJP has no presence, but people of that area also wish to know what the BJP's plans are. And there are issues on which the BJP does not speak. So in a country with so much of diversification, you need to have the Prime Minister to address or clear the air on many complex matters. This is why it is essential to have a press conference, even if one has to answer inconvenient questions. Press is a very integral part of democracy, and it
Well
should
said,
remain
Pankaj
that.
Vora.
And
Let's leave it on that note. Let us leave it on that note. Thank you so much, Pankaj Vora, and also for the rest of my panel, also for joining me with their views, Vineeta Hariharan and Nikul Patel as well.